get going on this. Alan Myers here. This is another episode of For the Republic. Joining me, the one, the only, the war hamster, Brady. Brady, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Well, glad you're here.
It's always a pleasure. I told you, married life is tough, but my wife does give me a hall pass to do this show about once a month, and we were overdue. So I put my foot down very sternly and begged her to allow me to do the show.
Well, yeah, that you put your foot down so it supported your knee. Yes, I understand that. Got it.
It's pretty accurate.
All right. How about a little wackadoodle news?
That's what I'm here for.
Okay. This one I saw, it's on its face, it's not that crazy, but then I thought about it, constitutionally, of course, and then I thought maybe this is a little weird. So, and we'll check it out. And last week, there was an article. Citizens, of course, we will have to worry later about what that word actually means. Citizens in the U.S. who meet certain requirements are eligible to receive a stimulus check for $1,390, which is being issued by the U.S. Department of Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service. There were rumors that the check would be 1,600. That's not it. And it is 1,390. And this is to go to aid low and middle income people and help them cover their rent and basic expenses. It's not to be taxed. To receive the stimulus check, you must have previously filed your tax return. If you haven't filed, you are not eligible. The income threshold is for single people under 75,000, married filing joint under 50,000. You get the idea. And head of household 112,500. Okay, doesn't that, and you may get it as a check, you may get it as a debit card, whatever. Here's my question. You remember this document?
Looks a lot like the Declaration of Independence.
And
Oh, is there a Constitution attached to that?
it's in here. And I'm thinking that the only powers given to the federal government are in Article 1, Section 8. Would you agree?
Pretty much that was the whole point of that
Okay.
article.
And if you get to the 10th Amendment, which I really like, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people, which means the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution don't exist. Where in Article 1, Section 8 was the federal government given the authority to issue checks or payments to the citizens?
It's not there.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking I missed something.
No, as usual, Alan, you've done your homework well, and no, there was no hidden message hiding between the lines that you'd missed. No, you're good.
So the question is, other than you and I bringing this up and talking about it, has anybody in major media noticed that this is not constitutional?
Not that I'm aware of. Of course, that's par for the course. They stopped worrying about that little document in your hand quite some time ago.
Yeah, probably right after James Madison was president. Anyway, I was looking at this and I wanted to talk about it, and then I thought, wait a minute, this is not constitutional. It's crazy. All right, let's see what else we got.
Well, it's funny is what's the purpose of a one-time cash payout? Is that really, I mean, for people living month to month, that gets you through one more month, maybe. We're talking about $1,390, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I'm old enough to remember this thing called COVID, where the government decided to give a whole lot of these free handouts to certain people.
Yeah.
Of course, it was so poorly managed. Like I had my business shut down for 2.5 years, and I got zero COVID relief.
Okay.
But I know people that stole millions and millions that had businesses that didn't get shut down. They decided to file anyways, and it's going to take years. And most of these people end up getting away with it scot free. That's the problem with having the governments and the businesses giving out handouts, whether they're doing it to their cronies or not. They shouldn't be in that business in the first place, and it certainly shouldn't be done on a federal level, overseeing 330 million people where there's so many opportunities, for grift. If you're going to do stuff like that where the state actually helps people out, I'm talking about welfare in general, manage it on the state and local level where you can actually hold people accountable.
Yeah. But what's interesting, continuing on this, is that media doesn't bring this up. Did anybody in the House or the Senate say, what are we doing?
Rand Paul probably did.
Hmm.
Maybe Thomas Massey, but very few others.
Well, especially with this, and to your point, $1,390 is nice to find if you find it on the street, but it's not going to materially change your life if you're where they think you are, which is lower middle income.
In our chat, Pano Rifle 2.0 says, "Come on, man, I could feed my chickens with that check."
Yes.
Well, that's a good call because the chickens lay eggs, and yeah, that's actually a viable business model you got going there. Send that man a check.
The vast majority of people don't have chickens to feed. Okay. Thank you for that. Another short article came out. The title is, and this is dealing with fact checkers. They're not talking about you and me and Doug, by the way. A fact checker admits that he screwed up on the COVID-19 lab leak headline. This person was from the Washington Post, Glenn Kessler. And on Thursday, he acknowledged publicly that he was completely wrong to dismiss the lab leak theory as doubtful in a 2020 headline. And he was talking recently with someone, and the title was the new coronavirus. Remember, this is 2020. Was the new coronavirus accidentally released from a Wuhan lab? That's the question. Answer, it's doubtful. And that became a huge flashpoint. The Glenn admitted that his article framing was his mistake, explaining that he was more interested in dealing with the claims that the virus was a bioweapon. And he now acknowledges saying it's doubtful went too far. One person who was part of it, uh, said, you know, that this was wrong. Her name is Sarah Callan, and Glenn eventually said, you should always listen to Sarah because she's right and I was completely wrong. Well, it's neat that we're looking at 5 years later that this is coming out, that I mean, if someone says it's doubtful, the next question is why? Why is it doubtful? You don't dismiss the statement, you ask about it. Any thoughts?
Well, you bring up Kessler as your quote unquote big air quotes here fact checker. And those of us who've been paying attention to the whole fact checking industry for a number of years realize you can't say the word fact check without air quotes because these people are terrible. Just want to give you some quick highlights. While you were talking, I just decided to ChatGPT, give me a list of all the things that Kessler has gotten wrong. First one listed is what you just talked about, the COVID lab leak theory. He got it wrong. Misled a lot of people. Probably led people into taking vaccines that they otherwise wouldn't have. Some of those people, like my parents, are dead right now. So
Mm,
thank you, Kessler. Yeah, you know how I feel.
yes.
But here's some of the other ones, really fun. Cheap fakes. He labeled viral video footage of Joe Biden acting confused during an event as cheap fake intended to mislead. Turns out even CNN's Jake Tapper revealed that those were authentic. They weren't cheap fakes. Joe Biden actually was confused. But
Wait a
Kessler,
minute. Wait a minute. He was confused.
yeah, well, I'm being nice, Alan. I'm trying to be kind. It's Sunday.
Thank you.
I'll give you a few more. There was a story about the dinner between Biden and Hunter Biden's business associates. Kessler's initial fact check denied the occurrence of a dinner involving President Biden and his son's business contracts. He later updated his piece to acknowledge that the dinner did indeed happen. So, fake news spreads around the world before the retraction gets there. This is
Yeah.
an example. That's what Kessler did again. Kessler claimed that the border closure required new law. He said that President Biden would need a new law to close the US-Mexico border. Well, that's actually been invalidated. And I think it's one of Trump's best talking points right now. You didn't need new law, you needed a new president. Because I wish I had this chart ready for you, but you look at border crossings under Biden, spiked, and under Trump, they've just gone away. So, and nobody passed a law. So Kessler blew that one. He
Are
also,
you telling me he's extremely consistent?
yeah, that's what I don't need to go any further. We know
No,
exactly.
no, no. Go, give me one more.
You want one more?
Yeah.
He claimed that Bernie Sanders was quote unquote misleading. Bernie Sanders stated that millions of Americans hold more than one job, a factual claim supported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Kessler rated the claim as misleading, arguing that represented only 5% of wage earners, a conclusion critics called nitpicky and questionable. He's all about the narrative. That's what this guy's, he'll defend any narrative, facts be damned, and maybe issue a retraction months later. And that's the problem with media today. So when you brought up Kessler, I started laughing right away.
So is that why he's a former Washington Post fact checker?
It's interesting. You've seen Mark Zuckerberg pretending to play nice with the Trump administration these last 6 months,
Hmm.
despite spending $400 million to help steal the election of 2020. You've seen Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post and Amazon, being somewhat friendly with the Trump administration. Actually, Washington Post has made some efforts to clean house. I mean, I'm not buying it for a second, but the reason he's a former is they're at least paying lip service to trying to become a little bit more credible. And it's the same idea that 2 years ago, CNN has got a new director of the station, and they got rid of some bad voices. You've seen a lot of the worst people fired from CNN and MSNBC. So I'm not saying I trust the mainstream media anymore, or that I think there's actually a move in the right direction, but at least it's not getting worse.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, a little bit of hope. These people are hacks. They should be held responsible for all their lies, though.
All right, I got to read again.
Please.
Yes, the Constitution. Are you familiar with the Second Amendment?
Yeah, I think I might have read it once or twice.
Okay.
It's a short one, Alan.
It is the third shortest of all the amendments. It's one sentence, 27 words, three commas. Not too hard to take in if you take the time to learn what the words mean. Let me ask you the silly question. Basically, the upshot on the Second Amendment is what it ends with, which shall not be infringed. Shall means must, shall not means must not. Infringe means to interfere, deal with. Who was the Second Amendment addressed to?
Alan and I were on the phone earlier this week, having this exact same conversation. So I'm actually going to play the role I'm going to play devil's advocate and act like an idiot so Alan can give all his great answers to this. Well, it means it can't be infringed by anyone, Alan. The Second Amendment's absolute. Nobody can infringe on my right to carry or my right to bear arms.
Oh, that's what dumb sounds like. Thank you. Uh, the Second Amendment is excuse me, is is an amending article to the U.S. Constitution, added, I believe, in 1791. It's never been touched since then, and it is an instruction to the just recently created federal government. That's that's what came out of the Constitution. This this new thing called the federal government. It was created by people. It was ratified by the states. It went operational in 1789. And if you look at the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers, there was a huge back and forth about was the federal government given too much, this new thing that they're going to create? Has it been given too much power or just enough? But if you have something like this isn't the states telling themselves what to do. This is the states telling the federal government what it can or cannot do.
Yeah,
And
hands off our right to bear arms to the federal government. They're not talking
keep and
about.
bear, the federal government. Each state, because the whole purpose of this right of the people is to permit, allow, and make happen a state's ability to have a militia, which if you listen to George Mason, it's all the people except a few political officials, in order for the state to be able to protect and defend itself from anything else, any other any other state and the federal government. Which means to me, every federal gun law, rule, regulation is unconstitutional.
100%. I've been saying this ad nauseum for years. Every federal gun law, by definition, is unconstitutional.
Okay.
But Alan, what about state gun laws?
It's up to the state to choose.
Well, it is, and that's it's evident. The idea concept here we're talking about is incorporation. Was the Bill of Rights incorporated to the states? And the answer is no, because had it been well, first of all, the Constitution was ratified 2 years before the Bill of Rights. So you're going to assume that for 2 years the states didn't have rights?
They had their own constitution.
They did. In fact, some of them are older than the U.S. Constitution. But more importantly, evidence of what you're saying is correct is that the states that joined the Union after the Constitution was ratified, they have their own state constitutions and their own bills of rights. And every single one of them, with the exception of California, which has changed, has language very similar to the Second Amendment about not infringing the right to bear arms. And that's addressing their state.
Yeah.
The state's ability to make laws regarding the right to bear arms is governed by their state constitution, and the federal government's ability is absolutely governed by the Second Amendment. And George Mason was one of the few that insisted this Constitution needs a Bill of Rights, similar to the British Bill of Rights from 1688, to ensure that it doesn't become a tyrannical government. And he was right, and unfortunately still became tyrannical. Continue.
Well, thank you. Now, have you ever heard of the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit?
I have.
Is
Seems
that a federal court?
it is.
Well, apparently, just recently, this federal court officially overturned California's one gun a month restriction. How is it that the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth District has the legal constitutional authority to rule on a state's gun law?
They don't.
Okay,
All right, so let me jump in here, if I may, before you
please.
pontificate on your point I know you're about to make. Our good friend Douglas V. Gibbs and I on my Refederalist report show, I've been going through Madison's notes of the Constitution
Mm.
at the Philadelphia Convention. And this is discussed ad nauseum. They are debating this left and right. Why are we going to actually give this authority? And the answer, because it never showed up in the document, obviously was no. But the arguments were on the table, they were shot down.
Pun intended. Got it. Well, apparently the Ninth Circuit issued a mandate on Thursday, which makes the court's earlier ruling enforceable. Oh, wow. The case was Nguyen versus Bonta. It was brought by a few people, including the San Diego County Gun Owners PAC. You had tell me this, two federally licensed firearm dealers. Is that constitutional?
No, the federal government has no business.
Okay. Anyway, uh, the the law that was overturned, allegedly, prohibited California residents from purchasing more than one handgun or semi-automatic centerfire rifle from a licensed dealer within any 30-day period. And supporters of the challenge, these are the people who wanted it, argued the measure unfairly restricted law-abiding citizens under the Second Amendment. Well, this is where I'm thinking to myself, people, this is a state issue, not a federal issue. The Second Amendment is a federal item. Why are you saying, why are you bringing the Second Amendment into the discussion? It's wrong. Any thoughts on that?
Well, quite a few. You're touching on a couple of my favorite topics.
Good.
Um, as we're going through Madison's notes, one of the biggest debates is whether there would be, and the wording is very important, whether there should be a federal negative on state laws. And some of the people at the convention thought there should be. The federal government should be all powerful. And other people said, well, we had that with England and their governor system. We really don't want to go back to what we had. And they won the discussion. And that's the Constitution that was sold to us and was ratified, was
Mhm.
one that did not allow a federal negative. Well, which basically what it means is there are things that are explicitly enumerated. It's the enumeration document. It's specifically enumerated as the business of the federal government, namely and specifically foreign affairs, defense, and interstate disputes is what the federal government should be involved in. Everything else could be handled locally. Fair
Right.
enough?
Yes.
Well, this idea of a federal negative of state laws was proposed and shot down like you would not believe. Interestingly, it was proposed that the Supreme Court would be the final arbiter of not only state laws, but also national legislature, basically Congress's laws. And that was proposed and shot down. Yet we got judicial review literally less than 2 decades later because a certain Federalist Supreme Court judge, John Marshall, summoned judicial review out of thin air. But I bring this up.
Did he get that where money comes from?
Right next door.
Okay.
There is a founding father from New Jersey by the name of David Brearley,
Mm.
Brearley. And he was there at the Philadelphia Convention, and he ended up becoming a federal judge. He's actually the true father of judicial review, which most people don't know.
Mm.
When he was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of New Jersey from 1779 to 1789, he decided on a famous case called Holmes versus Walton, where he ruled that the judiciary had the authority to declare whether laws were unconstitutional or not. He arbitrarily gave himself the power. And then we had Hilton versus United States 7 years later, and then Marbury versus Madison. And that's why these courts think they can stick their noses into things that are frankly none of their frickin' business.
Interesting. Yeah, Marbury versus Madison is the one I know pretty
Yeah, it goes
well.
back further. The true Holmes versus Walton is fascinating because that's where it actually came from. And most people don't argue that, but I've in my research I stumbled upon it and I thought I'd share it with your audience.
I appreciate it. The Congress was created to create the laws. Executive branch was to execute them, and judicial was to apply them. Nothing else.
So it doesn't say that the Ninth Circuit gets to determine whether your state gun laws are constitutional or not. It doesn't say
I'm
that.
gonna I'm gonna go with a no.
I'm gonna keep looking. It's got to be in there somewhere. These
Yeah, keep looking.
yeah.
It's right next to the double asterisk. Okay. California law is factually unconstitutional. This article continues on
Well, it can't be.
because because possession of multiple firearms and the ability to acquire firearms you purchase without meaningful constraints are protected by the Second Amendment, and California's law is not supported by the nation's tradition of firearm regulations. Okay, first of all, this is not protected by the Second Amendment because it's what a state is allowing or not allowing. That's wrong. And the nation should not have a tradition of firearm regulations, which meaning federal.
Well, the concept behind this, Alan, is they were not worried about a tyrannical state, becoming an authoritarian. They're worried about a tyrannical central government.
Right.
They just fought a bloody revolution to get away from a tyrannical central government. And they created a federalist system. It wasn't strong enough, under the Articles of Confederation. They said, okay, we'll meet in Philadelphia, see if we can modify the Articles of Confederation and give us a little bit more muscle without infringing on states' rights. And they took a step further towards authoritarianism. They wanted a little bit more centralized power, but just enough to maintain order and no more. And that's the Constitution that was ratified, not the Constitution we live under today. Those are two different things. It's been changed, and the understanding has been changed drastically, mostly by 20th century courts. And
The
they don't have that power.
one one last comment on the previous one with the payment going out. And yes, I go back to the Constitution. And yes, I'm going into Article 1, Section 9. Tell me how this might apply, if it does, to the U.S. Treasury and the IRS sending out $1,389. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury. Again, Article 1, Section 9. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. No money shall be drawn without an appropriation made by law. Did they pass a law? Or did they just decide to send out $1,359?
I don't really see a law being passed there, Alan.
Okay, very interesting. The uh, and this actually to me is just another way of stating that all of this comes down to us. We need to start speaking out, we the people, we the individuals, because the people that we have trusted in positions of power are not are not doing their job. They're not speaking out.
Well, we've created a system that incentivizes people that lack character, and I should, that's being kind, to get
Yes,
office so they can reward their cronies. That's the system that Hamilton pushed for. It's called crony capitalism, mercantilism back then. When they start talking about federally funded internal improvements, there's the opportunity to get people in office that will decide where those federal funds go. And therefore, people that want to bribe public officials will have a tendency to put the people they want in office, the people that are susceptible to those bribes. You do that for 245 years, you get the mess we're in today. So asking
Yeah.
for a solution to this from Congress is a ridiculous ask. It does have to start at the grassroots level.
Right.
Congress is not going to mitigate its own powers. We've got the Article 5. It's one of the 7 articles of the Constitution, yet we've never managed to use it once. And its whole purpose is to rein in an out of control federal government, but yet we don't use it.
There's a lot of people who, uh, that's the Article 5 convention.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that are very unsupportive of it. They call it the con,
Mm-hmm.
and which allows the people to propose amendments to the Constitution. And but the other part is that when more people understand what's going on, what's being done, what's being said, what's not being done, what's not being said, they will take action at their local level and start sending people who will do the job. It's just not what we want right now.
Yeah, the founders knew they knew factions were natural, and they thought that we'd see regional factions, which we did, actually led to a bloody civil war.
Hmm.
But they didn't envision national political parties where all you have to do if you want to bribe all of the politicians of 1.5 political parties is show up in DC with a nice fat checkbook. Before the 17th Amendment, at least they had to travel to 48 states,
Yeah.
bribe them individually. Not anymore. The national political party system is a big part of our problem.
To get an idea of how long this has been going on, and you know the case, I've talked about it before. Marbury, but it seems to fit in. Marbury versus Madison. Madison is James Madison. He is the Secretary of State for Thomas Jefferson. And Marbury is somebody who was given a judgeship or justice of the peace right at the end of John Adams.
Well, Alan, let me jump in and set the
Go.
stage a little bit better.
Okay.
So 1798, the biggest issue on the table was the United States going to intervene on the side of Britain or France during one of their multiple wars. The Jeffersonians favored France, and of course, the Hamiltonians, the Federalists, favored Great Britain. Um, it was so much animosity about this. They passed the Alien Sedition Acts of 1798, where they basically started taking away Americans' civil rights. If you spoke out against the Federalist government, this is John Adams as the president, basically the Hamiltonians, they were jailing you, taking away your civil rights. Habeas corpus is being suspended. Newspapers are being shut down. Those are the Alien Sedition Acts. You can't speak out against our nascent government.
You can't speak out against John Adams.
So Americans rose up against that like you wouldn't believe. And the 1800 election basically saw the Federalists driven out of power forever. And what they did on their way out the door is they said, that's fine, but we're going to keep, because we're nationalists. And you
Hmm.
say nationalists, and you talk about Donald Trump, you think about nationalism in a good way. God bless America, all that stuff, B 2 bombers flying over Putin's head. That's a different conversation than a nationalist. We had a federal government, not a national top down government, and which the Federalists wanted from day one. After they lost that election, they're the lame duck party for about 5 months back then, and they did what they started doing to enshrine their political power. They basically created a whole bunch of new federal courts called the Midnight Judges and appointed judges all around the country that would continue to wield power even that they couldn't wield electorally. They could not win anymore in the ballot box because America didn't support their vision. It was too tyrannical. So they flipped it around and appointed a bunch of judges. One of these judges that Alan's about to talk about is a guy by the name of Marbury. And I pass the baton back to you.
You know his first name?
I should.
Okay, well, anyway, Marbury was appointed, and to I think the position was actually in DC, and to get his position finalized, he had to receive certain papers or documents. Those papers were never received, and so he went to court, got to the Supreme Court. Was it three judges on the Supreme Court at that time?
I think it was 7 at the time.
Really? That may okay. Anyway, John Marshall, who was appointed to the Supreme Court by John Adams before his term ended, was Chief Justice, and they heard the case. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Marbury.
Hang on,
The one
hang
thing
on,
that
hang on.
mhm.
Well, if he's appointed by Adams and Adams's appointments are part of the case, shouldn't he have had to recuse himself?
Well, I'm getting there.
Okay. I jumped the gun on you. Sorry,
You
buddy.
did. Anyway, the the Supreme Court said Marbury should have gotten, should get his judgeship. But the one thing Marshall got correct, or the Supreme Court got correct, is they have no power of enforcement. Well, the kicker on this one is, and this is a case that's taught in law school, I'm told. But the kicker is that John Marshall, who was appointed to the Supreme Court by John Adams, Adams knew Marshall because while Adams was still president, John Marshall was his Secretary of State. And as Secretary of State, it was his job to get the papers to Marbury. This is an absolute conflict of interest.
Yeah,
And
from two different directions. Yes.
so it never should have gone down. But it just shows how long this has been going on.
Well, so exactly what is judicial review? And what's important because if you read the Constitution, it's not mentioned, and it's not mentioned because it was shot down at the Philadelphia Convention. It was proposed. Should there be a federal negative on state laws? I already talked about that, but who has a federal negative? Who determines if Congress is acting constitutionally? We all believe in checks and balances. Well, the check on Congress is a presidential veto. If they're able to override the presidential veto, Congress can pretty much do what they want. But there's another check that's unstated, and unfortunately, it is unstated because it was the power of nullification. The federal government can't enforce the states or to enact or carry out a federal law. States can say, no, we're not going to do it. The federal government does not have enough manpower to do it on their own. It's effectively nullified. We saw that throughout the 1800s, and it was very effective when they tried to put punitive tariffs on the southern states, and a couple of other examples of nullification. What I've always, what I've been thinking is there really ought to be some kind of a body that weighs in on whether Congress is doing, is this within your authority? Is this constitutional? And it most certainly should not be a federal judiciary that's appointed by Congress or by the Senate. It should be some kind of body that's appointed by the states because they're the ones who created the Constitution. They're the ones who send the legislators to Congress. And if they are acting up and on behalf of the national government, the states have the right to say no. So perhaps we ought to have some kind of constitutional court made up by representatives of the states that says thumbs up or thumbs down on questionable federal legislation. In the meantime, the Supreme, everyone running around, anytime something doesn't go your way inside your own state, and you go running home to mama and say, oh, I'll just go to the Supreme Court, that is not the way to run a constitutional republic in any way, shape, or form. That opens you up to judicial tyranny, which is what we're living under today.
This came up on radio yesterday, and my thought is this, and maybe I don't know if this is going to be require a constitutional amendment, a law, but I would say, or people are just going to have to demand it. If somebody is promoting a new law to be voted on in Congress, part of that new law has to state in it why this is constitutional. If it's not there, we ain't voting. They need to own why they're whatever they're asking for is constitutional and stated.
Is it within your authority to do this in the first? Why are you even talking about it in the first place if it's not within your authority?
Well, they're gonna, but at least they're gonna have to go through the effort to see if people buy it. But right now, that limited thing is not even being asked for. That's the problem.
We've got someone in chat. Big Kayuna says he totally disagrees with this conversation. Well,
Okay,
our point basically is the federal government had limited powers, and everything else was left to the states. If the federal government's weighing in on things they have no business doing, that's what you call tyrannical government. That's what they were always trying to avoid. Um, if you disagree with that, then yeah,
but
come on.
what is being disagreed with?
It just says to do with this whole conversation. So,
Okay, well maybe
no, it's understandable. I get the reaction quite a bit, especially when you start with the Second Amendment, because you know, trust me, Alan and I are both pro gun rights, like you wouldn't believe. We don't want the federal government touching our guns at all. Your state actually gets the right to do it. You
yeah,
know, the way Doug says it is, he goes, "Look, someone's got to make a law that my 12-year-old kid can't go down and buy all the firearms he wants. I don't want the federal government doing it, so it's got to be the state. Someone has to make that law. So some gun laws and restrictions are okay." Now, I'm from California. Alan lives in California, and they've got some of the worst gun laws in the country. I
right,
personally sit here in New Hampshire, where they have the best gun laws in the country, and by the way, also the lowest crime rate. Funny coincidence. Um, if you don't like your state's gun laws, you got two choices: work to fix them, or get to another state.
right,
But the bottom line is, I'd rather live in a country where the states are still sovereign and the federal government is not, than the other way around. And so that's what this conversation is. If you don't agree with that, you know, come on my show
okay.
anytime you want and bring your arguments. But I think that's a very sound constitutional argument we're making.
Thank you, thank you very much, Brady. All right, we're gonna switch to something really silly, and yes, it involves Bill Gates. Uncle Bill is now involved in a startup company in Illinois called Savor, and it is developing a so-called butter that is made without cows, plants, or any form of traditional agriculture. They're making it from carbon dioxide pulled from the air and hydrogen that's pulled from water. This is a process, uh, obviously, you know, done in a factory, combining carbon and hydrogen. They'll, put them together, heat them, oxidize them, and produce this waxy-like substance, and then process it into engineered fat molecules. Lecithin, flavoring, colorings, and water are added, and then eventually you get something that's supposed to be butter. Have you heard about this?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, so we're going to get how much electricity do you think it takes to do this? A lot.
But that's what I was going to say.
And, we want to go more and more synthetic food and agriculture. We want we're going to eat things that are coming out of a lab, not out of where we normally get them. The retail launch is set for 2027. Now, in this article, there were some comments, and I'd like to read them, then we can talk about it. One said, it might look like butter, it might taste like butter, it might perform like butter, but it is not butter. God blessed us with real milk and its offshoots. This is not one of them. Okay. Another one, considering all the pollutants in the air, that's not something I want to eat if the stuff is made from it. Another, this butter in quotes, is oils and fats pulled from sludge water. In essence, you're going to eat other people's you know what. Another one. Yes, this is made from human wastewater. I saw an article on it 3 or 4 days ago. I love referring to the FDA as the Food and Drug Assassins. Finally, you have to wonder how Gates keeps getting approval from the FDA for artificial lab experiment foods. We've known for decades that the FDA and pharma and food companies are in bed together. The FDA seems to approve virtually anything these industries want to put in people. This government office needs to be investigated, destroyed, and made over to protect Americans. Any thoughts?
And no disagreement with that conclusion. Two thoughts. You know, Bill Gates, his father, Bill Gates Sr., was on the board of directors of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was all about the technocratic Malthusian depopulation agenda. So when you see Bill Gates talking about food and health and everything like that, understand his background is about killing us all so that the elites get a rule over the 90% of the people we've killed off and they're remaining serfs. They're absolutely behind that philosophy. That's where he comes from. That's where this whole climate change that is a foundational belief of them.
Very sad.
When you start talking about Planned Parenthood, that's exactly what you're talking about, and that's Bill
Right.
Gates Sr. was on the board of directors of Planned Parenthood. So I'm guessing that there's a little bit of trickle down effect when you see Bill Gates talking about experimental mosquitoes and vaccines and stuff like that in Africa, none of which have ever done one bit of good, even though he's been bilking government money off the government teat the entire time, despite being a multi-billionaire.
Jeez.
That being said, you got to look at who founded the FDA, and that traces its roots back to the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers, of course, had a gigantic global near monopoly on petroleum. And when you're manufacturing petroleum, there's a lot of byproducts that can be used in a lot of other things. One of the things that the Rockefellers did through the Rockefeller Foundation, while they've hidden all their generational wealth behind a tax-free foundation and are still
Hmm.
manipulating world events 2 years before they gave the rest of us an income tax, started World War One, gave us the Federal Reserve. Yeah, those people,
Yeah.
we've been at war ever since. The Rockefellers went around, they're the charitable foundation, charity with a big air quote, started going to all the medical schools and funding them, saying, get rid of all the naturopathic remedies, and we want to train an entire generation of doctors who prescribe petroleum based pharmaceuticals. Well, you fast forward 80 years later, and we are where we are today. And the same Rockefeller Foundation did a huge war game study in 2011 of what a global pandemic would look like. And our reaction to the quote unquote pandemic of COVID is exactly what they war gamed out 10 years before the fact. These are the same people that have been drilling one world government, new world order, and all this BS climate crap down our throats for decades. Same damn people.
Mm.
So when you bring up the FDA, yeah, you got to look at the roots. And by the way, Bobby Kennedy is doing one hell of a good job right now. I love the Make America Healthy Again movement. I mean,
Super.
they are kicking ass. Go Bobby.
The original Rockefeller was John Rockefeller.
John David, and interestingly enough,
John D. Yeah. Okay.
his father was one of those guys who went around from town to town selling opium-based elixirs, and he was on the run most of his life. He was a cutthroat businessman, not a good person in any way, shape, or form. His son learned one lesson: competition is sin. John David Rockefeller destroyed his competition. You want to talk about the robber barons? This is, to me, he's the epitome. All roads lead to Rockefeller. Carnegie's. You can talk about J.P. Morgan. Um, all Vanderbilt's, all these people, but nobody was as vile as Rockefeller. And what happened? He was getting so much grief. He hired a PR person, and there's this awful picture of him. You can see it in the cover of the New York Times if you go look it up. Of this guy who looks like an actual vampire handing out a penny to a kid on the street, trying to act like he's kind, trying to rehab his public image. And that's where they came up with this idea of these tax-free foundations and under the guise of charity. just like Gates does today, just like the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. They call themselves charities, but they're actually still manipulating the government for their own endeavors throughout the world. These are the NGOs. These are the people who fund the education system.
Mhm.
They determine all of what all of our what do they call it, sacred institutions. All the think tanks come from these tax-free foundations, from the robber barons. And follow the money; it's there. I'm not making this stuff up. The paper trail is there.
One quote that's assigned to John Rockefeller way back in the day was, consolidation is the future. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, don't we believe in well, okay, so now we got to talk about what cartel behavior is. Yeah, everyone said they're a monopoly. Teddy Roosevelt broke up the trusts. No, he didn't do anything of the sort. They restructured themselves into limited liability corporations so the founders could never be sued. And they put the family wealth into tax-free foundations, and the trusts were no more. That's
Right.
all it was. It was a legal maneuver done by the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. Just so happens Sullivan and Cromwell alumni are the ones who founded the CIA 50 years later, but that's, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. That would have been the Dulles brothers, both worked for Sullivan and Cromwell. They're also the ones who's created the first modern U.S. corporation, the way we look at them today. And that would have been U.S. Steel when Andrew Carnegie sold out to J.P. Morgan. That all happened right at the same time, 1911 to 1913, when they're changing the entire world because they had more money than God after 4 decades of single party Republican only rule. But that's another conversation.
Well,
So,
thank you. Go ahead.
no, that's a good enough. That's enough of a rant for now.
Okay. No, I like it. The Since we were talking about food and something that might want to be butter but isn't, did you hear about this? A man was charged with felony assault because he threw a Subway sandwich at a federal agent.
I saw that.
Okay. Now, I don't know if this was a meatball sandwich and the meatballs were really hard, but anyway, uh, the person who threw it, 37-year-old Sean Charles Dunn, threw the sandwich at a Customs and Border Protection agent. Yeah, the attack occurred last Sunday, and when Dunn was heard shouting at the officers, they were fascists, and he hit the officer in the chest, not the face, the chest. He did admit, I did it. I threw a sandwich. There's video of it. And the U.S.
Tonight,
attorney,
Sean Dunn accused of attacking a federal officer.
Sorry, I was trying to find it for you.
yeah, okay. The police, and this came from U.S. Attorney for D.C., Janine Pirro. The police are not out there to get pushed around or beat up. I'm kind of wondering about getting beat up with a sandwich. Okay. Anyway, uh, to consider this a felony, your thoughts?
Well, it cracks me up. We know that DC votes like 94% Democrat, which means they're voting 94% for the establishment statist government. That's what they're voting for. Democrats, they don't care if it's a Republican or Democratic power, as long as that party is full on supporting the bureaucratic administrative state. That's what these people care about. But this guy, he's a lawyer, career, DOJ, who is so upset about the idea of actually, you know, fighting crime and stopping, cleaning up Washington, D.C. He's willing to
Mhm.
throw away that entire career and a lifelong of really sweet pensions. Think about how brainwashed that guy's got to be. I mean, that is a really dumb personal decision.
Plus, he threw the sandwich after he paid for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and didn't get to eat it. And then they took the cops. If I was trying to pull up the scene because it's funny, it took him a whole block to catch him. But yeah, that's look, assault with a sandwich is not a major felony by any stretch. but he's fired. He's lost his pension. What's he going to do? I mean, what a really dumb idea, this guy.
Very dumb idea.
I'm hoping he's having some regrets. Hey, there's a our friend in the chat.
Yeah.
Let me find it again real quick.
Hmm.
He's asking a good question.
Okay.
So give me 1 second to find it.
No worries.
Um, Basically, he's saying, God darn it, was right there. The chat's too active tonight. That's not a good bad thing. I'll find it in a second here, and I'll interrupt you
Okay.
as soon as I find it because I want to come back to this because it's a good question talking about the incorporation of the Bill of Rights in the state.
Okay.
So we do want to address this. So I don't think we've hit.
Another issue that came up was AI powered radar can now spy on your phone calls from 10 feet away. This is coming from a team out of Penn State. They're computer scientists. And they apparently have come up a way to eavesdrop, detecting the microscopic vibrations your smartphone gives off during a call and being able to translate them into words using AI. Have you heard about this?
A little bit.
Okay. The aim is at phones and it can capture the subtle tremors. This is like sometime a millimeter wave radar. And these tremors are coming from the earpiece when someone is speaking. These vibrations are invisible to the naked eye, but with the right tools, you can get a transcript of the conversation. And this is just the beginning. Currently, it's about 60% accurate from 10 feet away, covers a vocabulary of about 10,000 words. And the lead project researcher and doctoral candidate in computer science says if we capture these same vibrations using remote radars and bring in machine learning, we can determine whole conversations. Now, why do you want to do this? Okay. This is, I mean, how rogue can this get? Massively. And then you couple this with 24/7 surveillance, with videos, you have no privacy. Your thoughts?
I was reading a article earlier today about some of the warnings about AI, and some of the quote unquote smartest people in the world are telling us, there's probably like a 25% chance that humanity survives artificial intelligence. And a lot of really smart people are weighing in on this subject that this is just a really bad idea. But if you're the type of people that want to have a tyrannical government, big brother watching everybody and stuff like that, AI is your best friend right now. Personally, I use AI every day. I think it's an incredible tool. You still need a human component. I mean, it can't do what I do. It can't do what a lot of people do for a living, but it does save you a lot of time and homework and research. You just need to have a human who's got the ability to point out how flawed it is. AI is going to keep getting better and better and faster incrementally. It's a scary topic. But on this specific subject, I don't know, go back to what's the question on the table?
What do you think about this kind of surveillance?
Uh, Obviously, our Constitution says it's not allowed.
Okay.
We do not have warrantless surveillance allowed. I mean, we just spent a decade, talking about Russiagate and the FISA, how badly our surveillance state, the intelligence agencies have abused, the Patriot Act, everything like that, to take away our constitutional rights. It's just not
Hmm.
okay. Just because we have the ability to do something doesn't mean we have the constitutional right to do so.
Right.
So no, I'm against it. That's a big no for me.
Okay. What were you researching?
I wanted to go back to I was talking about AI, but I want to go back to Big Kayuna's question because this is a big one, and he's asking these questions in good faith, and I appreciate that, brother. He says, so the states can throw the Bill of Rights in the garbage and say, nope, don't like it. Sorry for the confusion. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying the Bill of Rights applies to the federal government only. The states have their own Bill of Rights. The whole concept of the enumeration doctrine is that this new federal government they created in 1787 at the floor of Philadelphia and was argued about forever and ratified. And they debated it in the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. They debated this ad nauseum in the ratification conventions, particularly in Virginia and New York, where these battles were most heatedly fought. Was this new federal government, is it going to be too powerful? We have to put handcuffs on it, and those handcuffs are the Bill of Rights. That's what George Mason argued for. And Sons of Liberty said something I agree with. Once you start enumerating your God-given natural rights, you kind of weaken them. And you see that today. You see people on the left saying, oh, our right to vote. No, these aren't your rights. Those are privileges. Your God-given natural rights to life, liberty, and property, those are your natural rights. And that's what the Bill of Rights was supposed to protect. Say the federal government can do a lot. We give them some powers, but no more. And we're going to put an extra set of handcuffs on them with the Bill of Rights. You cannot restrict our freedom of speech. You cannot do search and seizure. You definitely can't mess with our right to bear arms. But your state can. Because if you had said the Bill of Rights applied to the states, the Constitution never gets ratified. They feared that this people meeting in Philadelphia were going to take away the states' rights, and they weren't going to do it. That there's no way it gets ratified. And if you go, look, Doug and I are going through like a 30-week series, going through Madison's notes in that convention.
Mm.
This is brought up time after time after time, and they argued it through. And the end product, the Constitution that was argued for and ratified, did not, the Bill of Rights, which wasn't in existence for 2 more years, there's no way that the states were giving up their rights to handle internal affairs. But they weren't worried about their own state governments becoming tyrannical. They were worried about a federal government becoming tyrannical. And that's the key point. The states were to remain sovereign. Alan, add on to that, please.
Let me see if I can find it. Well, it is about back then you had 13 states. They previously were colonies. They established themselves. They were independent political entities. They didn't always get along with each other. They had to complete the war with Britain, which meant they needed some unifying document, which was the Articles of Confederation. They got through the war. I don't think it was so much they won as Britain finally just quit.
Well,
And
came back in 1812 trying again.
I'm sorry?
They came back in 1812 and tried it again.
Yeah. And it's out of what happened to the states, their roadways, waterways, is what brought about the Bonus Bill of 1817.
One of our favorites.
And for those who don't know, this came, the idea behind the Bonus Bill was federal funds were going to be used to help improve state waterways and roadways as a result of the War of 1812. And one of the people who promoted this was, of all people, James Madison. Eventually people in the House and the Senate got it going. They got it passed. And on the last day in office, James Madison is looking at that bill. Some of the people who got it through Congress come in, you going to sign it? And he said no. Now, the president after Madison was Monroe. Grady?
Uh,
I think so.
Madison then Monroe. It was Madison Monroe.
Yeah.
Well,
they asked President Madison, okay, just leave it there. Monroe will sign it when he gets in here tomorrow. And James Madison, father of the Constitution, president of the United States at the time, has to break the news to the guys. And he tells them, even though he was a prime promoter of this. Madison said, there's nothing in, he came to his constitutional senses and he said, there's nothing in the Constitution that gives me the power to sign this. He vetoed the bill. If you really want to understand it, look up the veto of the Bonus Bill of 1817. And all they wanted to do was use federal funds to improve roadways and waterways, which today would be a no-brainer.
Well,
And
what,
when and
yeah,
when
and that's
Madison says there's nothing in the Constitution that gives me the power to sign this, he knows what he's talking about.
well, yeah, and that's exactly leads into my argument about, remember the Hamiltonians wanted two things: protective tariffs and federally funded internal improvements. In the days of the founders, that was building canals so that the steamship magnates from the Northeast could make money on the taxpayer back. And in the days of Lincoln, that was the people that wanted to make become the robber barons and make a fortune off the railroads built on the taxpayers back. But that's exactly why the bonus bill is so important. The bonus bill should have vetoed every bit of that legislation in history. The it's we ought to actually, next time I come on here, just pull up the bonus bill and read it word for word and talk about what a brilliant short document that was. You got it right.
All right.
But
The
federally funded internal improvements is an acronym for crony capitalism, meaning I got my buddy in Congress, therefore I'm going to get the tax dollars to build, to overcharge the government, to make myself rich. And that's what crony capitalism is. And that's what the mercantilist system we fought to get away from. That's what England had been doing for 2 centuries. It's really similar to fascism, by the way, where the government and private business work hand in hand. They are all really synonymous. So when Alan brings up the veto of the bonus bill,
it's not too long.
do you bring it up right now? Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
should. I think it's important.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. Why not talk about it? So I'm going to look down and read this. You ready?
You want me to pull up on screen?
No, I got it here. Unless you want to pull it up on screen.
Start reading. I'll find it quick enough.
All right. This is March 3rd, 1817. Veto message on internal improvements bill. To the House of Representatives of the United States. Having considered the bill this day presented to me entitled An Act to Set Apart and Pledge Certain Funds for Internal Improvements, and which sets apart and pledges funds for constructing roads and canals, improving the navigation of watercourses, in order to facilitate, promote, and give security to internal commerce among the several states, and to render more easy and less expensive the means and provisions for the common defense, I am constrained by the insuperable difficulty I feel in reconciling the bill with the Constitution of the United States, to return it without objection to the House of Representatives in which it originated. The legislative powers vested in Congress are specified and enumerated in the 8th section of the first article of the Constitution. You hear that?
Isn't that what you said about an hour ago?
And it does not appear that the power proposed to be exercised by the bill is among the enumerated powers. Okay, he is using that term in 1817, enumerated powers, or that it falls by any just interpretation within the power to make laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution those or other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States. The power to regulate commerce among the several states. You know what? This is beautiful. Because this is coming, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is coming from James Madison, considered the father of the Constitution. He was there for the whole thing, took incredible notes, helped write it. The power to regulate commerce among several states. Keep in mind, states begins with a capital S, so he's really emphasizing that. Cannot include a power to construct roads and canals and to improve the navigation of watercourses in order to facilitate, promote, and secure such a commerce without a latitude of construction, departing from the ordinary import of the term strengthened by this known inconveniences, which doubtless led to the grant of this remedial power to Congress. You want to comment on that before I go on?
No, I'm just going to sit there and just, embrace the brilliance of that, because it is the stamp of approval for my entire argument I just made.
To refer the power in question to the clause, here we go. Oh, this is good. To provide for the common defense and general welfare. I'll say it again. To refer the power in question, which is the bonus bill, to the clause to provide for the common defense and general welfare would be contrary to the established and consistent rules of interpretation as rendering the special and careful enumeration of powers which follow the clause nugatory and improper. Such a view of the Constitution would have the effect of giving to Congress a general power of legislation instead of the defined and limited one hereto understood to belong to them. The terms common defense and general welfare, embracing every object and act within the purview of a legislative trust. He's telling you,
You guys are stretching it way too far. That's not what general welfare means. And as Tiana in the chat just said, they also use the commerce clause way too much, because anything can be now deemed to be interstate commerce, which is
it,
not what it meant.
it would have the effect of subjecting both the Constitution and laws of the several states, in all cases not specifically exempted, to be superseded by laws of Congress, it being expressly declared that the Constitution of the United States and laws made in pursuant thereof shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges of every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Such a view of the Constitution, finally, would have the effect of excluding the judiciary authority of the United States from its participation in guarding the boundaries between legislative powers to the general and state governments, inasmuch as questions relating to the general welfare, being questions of policy and expediency, are unsusceptible of judicial cognizance and decision. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I wish every federal officer, every politician would have to be sworn in on not only the Bible, because that's important, but also the bonus bill veto, because that is just, it's beautiful. It's correct. And remember, this is 28 years after the Constitution's been ratified. Madison was there at the time. And a friendly reminder, Madison showed up in Philadelphia with a bit of a nationalist bent. He wanted to create a very authoritarian central government. He was writing letters with Jefferson. He was speaking with people like Franklin and Mason and some of the other founding fathers. You won't see this in the Madison's notes, because a lot of these discussions happened in the taverns after they adjourned every day. A lot of work got done over beers. That's why I love the founding fathers for that. But Madison, you can see it during the entire Philadelphia Convention, which is almost 4 months long, or about 4 months long. He went from being a nationalist to actually representing this pure Constitution as it was ratified, not the Constitution as we know today, two different things. He actually became one of the most pure constitutions and deserves the name the father of the Constitution, although it's Jefferson speaking through his pen. It is
Continuing on.
A lot of this is Jeffersonian, by the way.
A restriction of the power to provide for the common defense and general welfare to cases which are to be provided for by the expenditure of money would still leave within the legislative power of Congress all the great and most important measures of government, money being the ordinary and necessary means of carrying them into execution. If a general power to construct roads and canals and to improve the navigation of watercourses, with the train of powers incident thereto, be not possessed by Congress, the assent of the states and the mode provided in the bill cannot offer the power. The only cases in which the consent and cession of particular states can extend the power of Congress are those specified and provided for in the Constitution. Back to, if we didn't give it to you, you don't have it. I'm not unaware of the great importance of roads and canals and the improved navigation of watercourses, and that a power in the national legislature to provide for them might be exercised with signal advantage to the general prosperity. But seeing that such a power is not expressly given by the Constitution, I'll say it again. But seeing that such a power is not expressly given by the Constitution, and believing that it cannot be deduced from any part of it without an inadmissible latitude of construction and a reliance on insufficient precedent, believing also that the permanent success of the Constitution depends on a definite partition of powers between general and state governments, and that no adequate landmarks would be left by the constructive extension of the powers of Congress as proposed in this bill. I have no option but to withhold my signature from it and to cherishing the hope that its beneficial objects may be attained by resort for the necessary power to the same wisdom and virtue in the nation which established the Constitution in its actual form and providently marked out in the instrument itself a safe and practical mode of improving it as experience might suggest. James Madison. Your thoughts?
It's well done. I think it's Madison's best doc, and it's the best document ever wrote, assuming that he didn't write all of the Constitution. But that being said, I think it's brilliant. Everyone should swear an oath upon it, and it hits home everything we have been saying about what states' rights are and what are limited government powers. He's correct. Unfortunately, it didn't take too long for them to ignore him. 8 years later, Andrew Jackson would come into power and expand the federal government exponentially, and everything went downhill further from that. But from that at that point in time, I love the bonus bill veto.
It's a great thing.
Yeah, it really is. Glad you read it.
Thank-
I should probably keep that stickied up here to reference more often.
I'm glad you suggested it. All right. Here's something crazy out of Canada. Can you imagine that?
America's hat or a 51st state. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
them. I don't want them, by the way.
All right. Well, this came down just recent. Excuse me, hold on. Several provinces in Canada, including Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland and Labrador, have issued orders. Can you hear my background?
No, you're good.
Okay. Have issued orders to stay out of the woods,
I knew you were going to go there.
claiming fire danger. This happened on August 5th. Nova Scotia banned people from hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles like ATVs in the woods due to the elevated wildfire risk. The Premier of New Brunswick, Susan Holt, admitted that people are not banned from the woods due to the possibility that they would cause a fire, but that they could break a leg. There would be no emergency responder to help them. Apparently, she actually called for rain dances to stop the fires. Okay. Now, in Newfoundland and Labrador, is that where the Labrador Retriever comes from?
No,
Oh.
I'm just guessing.
All right.
Canada's hasn't been around long enough to get a dog named after him.
Now, Newfoundland and Labrador say it will fine violators of the burn ban. You want to guess how much? Up to?
25 grand. Bill West just said it in chat.
Keep going.
I heard 25 grand. That's what I read too. Is it higher than that?
No, this is Newfoundland and Labrador.
Okay.
$150,000 and up to 1 year in prison.
And that's the same country that just kind of caught a guy who worked for the government who set 30 fires last year. Okay.
All
Continue.
right. And, you know, they could have aerial bombers to help extinguish wildfires, but Canada has refused to purchase them. And uh, they don't want to clean up all the dead stuff. One man in Nova Scotia, uh, he intentionally did this. He's a veteran, former candidate for the People's Party of Canada, and he's quoted as saying, "I want to challenge this order in court, and the only way to do that is to get fined," he said in a video. "So I'm not trying to make trouble for you guys." He's talking to the police. "I just want a piece of Tim Houston, the premier, and I want to be as accommodating and as nice as I can." So he actually walked into the Nova Scotia forest, and when he walked out, he got a $28,000 fine.
Yeah, I saw this
Actually, it
too.
was $28,872.50.
So Canada, which actually has a land area which I think is greater than the United States, if we don't count Alaska, it is definitely greater, and has about what one eighth the population, has now basically made it illegal for anybody to go outdoors outside their front yard. By the way, I agree. Tiana just said it in chat, and I looked it up while you were talking. Yeah, the Labrador Retriever does come from Newfoundland, which is synonymous with
Okay.
Labrador. So you had that correct. I was wrong. Thanks, Tiana.
More now in I guess maybe this is in New Brunswick, more than 70% of that province, remember they have provinces, not states. 70% of, I believe this would be New Brunswick, is forest. And Nova Scotia, you got a $25,000 fine. Um, and to me, it's crazy because they don't want to clean up all the dead stuff. Uh, they don't, it's just, we're going to keep you out. And now, granted, this ban only goes until October 15th, but not, it's not good. And see, to me, what I see is when you start doing this, what's the next step?
Well, I
Uh,
think we already saw that.
because if
We
this
already we
last
already saw
thing,
that. Yeah, we already
last
saw
thing,
that. Yeah, we already
if
saw the
this,
next step, Alan.
go
We saw
ahead.
the next step with the Canadian truckers, where they took away their bank accounts, with our lockdowns, with COVID. We already know what the next step is.
Yeah. But if you think about uh, what's his name? I'm blanking on it. World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab,
Yeah.
the Great Reset. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. For lack of a better term, the 15-minute cities. You are put into an area that you can traverse in 15 minutes. Chances are you won't have a car or need a car. You'll, and you don't leave without permission. And the ultimate lockdown would be if money was all electronic, there's no physical money. Your electronic money is not good outside of your area without getting authority to spend it. That this is all just more and more consolidation of people, elimination of rights.
Yeah, central bank digital currency. This is the Great Reset. This is the New World Order. This is what Skull and Bones, why it calls itself the Order. This is why people like the British Roundtable movement, the Fabian Socialists, have been moving towards this for more than a century. This is where we're going. Alan, I have a question for you.
Oh,
Do you know what year Canada actually got their full independence from Britain?
no.
1982.
All right.
They finally got full control over their constitution and the need to have Britain approve their constitutional changes. It's one of the youngest countries in the world.
But they're not big on freedom. Okay.
Yeah, not so much. Yeah, there's a great story from the Revolutionary War days. Ben Franklin spent some time up in Canada, tried to convince two of the British provinces they were in Canada, that's all there were at the time, to join us in the Revolution. And Franklin failed.
Mm.
Otherwise, Canada would be part of the United States today, and the War of 1812 never takes place.
Yeah.
But Franklin tried. I mean, they just said no. There were enough loyalists, what we call Tories in America,
Hmm.
that they weren't going to do it. And it's interesting how that happened. The British governor levied out some pretty serious bribes to the more prominent, uh, what's now Canadian business people. Said, look, if you don't bolt from the British flag, we'll make you bloody rich, and they did. And that's what happened. But we came really close to having most of North America under one flag.
Wow.
Could have happened.
Yeah.
And you know what? We like Canadians. I mean, is there a single country in history who've had better neighbors than us? Even though I know they're a pain in the ass and they're way too down the socialist path right now, but they're pretty good people.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about them ever invading, and we don't really have the desire to invade them. It's a pretty good people to have a border with.
They they observe and respect the border.
Well, until you start talking about some of the fentanyl coming through the northern border, but that's not tonight's topic, so we'll do that another day.
Yeah.